for nursing, but then have now been with the Center for Architecture for the past about 8 years.
Wonderful. And you know, I can safely say that all those people who just introduced themselves, if we lost any one of them, the Center for Architecture would be very, very, very badly damaged. So we're a very small group, but I'm amazed at how much people have accomplished, and that includes the students as well. But before we get into the heart of the matter, I just wanted to, rather than do a land acknowledgement and rush through it, we do understand that we all work on the lands of Indigenous people right around the world because we have to think about this as a global issue. But I was at a conference in Montreal, and instead of rushing through a land acknowledgement, one of the Indigenous scholars at the conference, Sylvie McAdam, she said, "Turn your guilt into respect for our humanity." And so that's what I wanted to share with you, rather than talk about the land acknowledgement, but rather think about positive steps that we could start making right now to change our essentially change our guilt into something positive. And in terms of that, I think we can now sort of jump right into it. And I know we've got a lot of people online. And just in case, though, I wanted to share with you what becoming an architect is all about. You can see we do have a small publication on becoming an architect in Canada. A little bit out of date now because I wrote it a few years ago, but I've updated the figures here. You know, you start with a bachelor degree, hopefully in a design related profession. It's usually 4 years. It's usually about, $8,000 per year or something like that. Um, you need to put together a portfolio. You have to have good marks. You may do an interview. You need letters of reference, and you may do a design or drawing exercise as well. And then if you're lucky enough, and it is a very stiff competition, as many of you know, I think they're running about 10 applicants for every seat at every school across the country now. It's in some cases even more. And it can vary. You know, there's 12 accredited schools. You may spend 2 or 3 years there, and tuition can be vary from 6,000 to 13,000 per year. Now, on the other hand, if you don't have a degree in design, but have another kind of degree, and we try and figure out how we might make a foundation year, and various universities have foundation years, so that you may have to do an extra year of study, but then you'll be into the master's program. But, and I wanted to thank Carol for putting this together. This is, it's approximate, but these are the yearly costs, as near as we can figure out, for each of the universities, the 12 accredited schools of architecture across Canada. And you can see some of them, they may have a low tuition like the University of British Columbia, but if you have to move to Vancouver, that tuition is eclipsed by the cost of living for 8 months in that city. So we wanted you to know about all of those things, because in some ways, being able to stay in your own community, as you would if you were taking the program with us, that can be a tremendous economic benefit for you. I've indicated which ones have French language instruction, and also the costs, and Carol has converted these to Canadian dollars for the four that we know about in the United States, and what they charge for tuition. So it's all over the map. What we're trying to do is figure out where we can slot something in here that will be cost effective as well. Our graduate programs at the moment are very expensive at Athabasca. I'm trying to see if I can get us a deal so to reduce that. Otherwise, we will be one of the more expensive programs in Canada, and I do not want that. So just so everybody knows as well, and Carol, if you're with us, I have I have difficulty admitting people into the room when I'm doing the presentation. Thank you. So what happens after graduation? You should know this as well. You have to do 3,720 hours of internship under a licensed Canadian architect, recorded in your experience record book. It can't all be the same kind of experience. You have to have a diversity of experience. Then you have 4 exams, which are called the exact exams, but you can do those while you're doing your IAP or internship. And then you register. And again, there's always money involved. It can cost, upwards of $1,000 a year per association. And on the other hand, you could also do a post-professional master's or PhD and get involved with research and teaching, or as many of us have, like Henry and Veronica and Trevor and I have, you can do both. So you want to keep your options open. But once you get your master's, there's a traditional pathway, just like we discussed, but there's all sorts of branches that you can explore in all of these different disciplines if you have a master's, an accredited master's. Interestingly enough, this is not an unusual circumstance. The OAA did a survey, and 25% of their members work outside of traditional architectural practice. In Alberta, while the architecture market is relatively flat, the need for good construction managers, as you can see from these numbers in home building construction, senior construction, and architectural projects, it's huge. In Alberta alone, could absorb all of our graduates for years to come. And there's no reason, I mean, these are all good careers. But there's also other things, cost estimating, heritage conservation, and other kinds of development. And of course, the research aspect too. So there's a lot of things that can go on, can branch out from a master's of architecture. So into this comes our Center for Architecture, and we've always wanted to provide an inclusive, accessible, and a comprehensive education in architectural studies, but we see ourselves now as a global institution. Our current degrees, as you know, if you've been in the BSc, 7 virtual design studios offered 3 times a year, 28 online courses that you can take any month of the year. And then we do have this thing called the Graduate Diploma in Architecture, which is 3 studios and 5 online courses, which I'll be honest with you, almost nobody takes. And so it's a bit of a lame duck at the moment. But our Bachelor of Science in Architecture, we really thought that what we would be doing was really serving the RAIC syllabus, which is a work experience program. But our Bachelor of Science in Architecture, almost from day one, just blew the syllabus away in terms of numbers. We still, and we will continue to provide the academic courses for the syllabus as long as the RAIC wants us to do it. And in fact, this will make them even better. But you can see there's a huge demand in Canada for an online program in architecture. And we started to hear this from outside sources as well. When we did our external program review in 2020, they said that wasn't part of their mandate, but they said they were enthralled by the prospect of a new accredited Masters of Architecture program. And we do want all parties to rally behind this tactical and meaningful direction. And the external reviewer report came back to say that a Master of Architecture conducted primarily online would be an excellent and distinct opportunity for students in Canada and across the globe. And this actually came from the Dean of the Boston Architectural College. So we applied, and on June 15th of this year, the Ministry of Advanced Education approved our proposal for a new Master of Architecture program. But that's only one of the hurdles we have to pass before we can get this program accredited. And so now what we're going to offer is still the Bachelor of Science in Architecture, and we'll keep the GDA, but we'll expand it to be a Master's of Architecture as well, with about 13 online courses and 3 virtual design studios and 1 low residency design studio. And this is the most important part, I think. We hope to serve a very different demographic from other schools. We want to serve those who cannot attend university on a full-time basis. And that's really, really important to us. At the same time, we've become really aware of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada and its calls to action, and we're looking carefully at the educational ones to make sure that we can create a much more open and inclusive approach to architecture that really does take into consideration Indigenous and traditional knowledge. So the key components are to expand the GDA to go to 60 credits in total, about 2 years, have a low residency at the beginning, have it self-paced, and this is good, very, very interesting. We're trying to work out co-ops, but virtual co-ops, work integrated learning using artificial intelligences with you. And we're going to share with some of that in a moment. So our key principles: regenerative design, equity, diversity, and inclusion, including mentoring, global experiences, and student developed curriculum. Project-based learning, that's where we're going to connect the electives to the design studios. And so the proposed masters will look something like this, with design. And here's the low residency one. We'll look at professional kind of courses as well. Here's the virtual co-op with the AIs. We'll look at communications, we'll look at theory, but have a focused course on regenerative design. And we'll also look at history, but also have a course in equity in design. And we're going to talk about all of those things in the white boxes in just a moment. And so technical subjects as well. Sorry, I forgot about those, but we have all, it's a basic architectural education, but with some new twists and developments to it that will help us be more innovative and serve more people. So it's 13 mandatory courses, 10 new courses, and 19 courses overall. And now I'd like to hand it over to Trevor to talk about one of the most important themes, which is regenerative design. Trevor, over to you.
Thanks, Douglas. Yeah, so the regenerative design work that we've been looking at together is really focusing on how we can create a better built environment that interfaces well with the natural world that we are living in. So the big idea is that we could actually restore rather than destroy. And the impact of the built environment has been quite destructive. We think that we can look at more strategic ways we can produce more energy, more resources than we can consume, and purify rather than pollute, not just the earth, but for our bodies and minds as well, like a healthy kind of well-being future for the built environment. Next slide. So some of the principles of regenerative design, which we've been working with over the last few years, have been looking at how we can really restore the natural environment, and look at ways to bring in nature to architecture, how we can bring in plants, wildlife, and water systems, more purification of water than contamination. There's some great examples like the Omega Center, which has become a beautiful building that actually purifies wastewater. Also producing more energy than buildings consume. One of the first steps is to make the building ultra energy efficient by working with the climate, but also looking at how we could generate energy within the buildings as well, within the built environment. Urban agriculture, growing food. There were some great sessions if you're able to access the Banff AAA conference earlier this year. There's some great work there on urban agriculture that's been done. And looking at how through smart ways of enhancing the program of these buildings, we can generate business opportunities for entrepreneurs or for people who want to really get good economy out of the buildings here. Recycling buildings, a lot of materials can be recycled, and reducing the amount of kind of natural virgin materials that are used in building construction. Looking at greenhouse gases, this is clearly an important factor with global warming, and how we can use materials which have a lower embodied carbon footprint, for example. The use of natural light and the use of natural ventilation wherever possible, to prevent the need to always run mechanical systems, always run artificial lighting, which have been proven to be bad for our health. And then no toxic chemicals. And a good example of that is the Red List under the Living Futures Institute. So we've developed this micro-credential building on some of these principles as a team, as a faculty together. And this is going to be offered through Athabasca as an energy efficiency micro-credential using artificial intelligence as well as design. And our intent was to provide the learner with an understanding of how many dimensions of energy efficiency and regenerative design can exist, and how do you start to bring those to a project. Obviously, with the master's level, you're going to have more experience than you would at the graduate undergrad level, and you're going to be having experience in working setting of how do you bring ideas to the table, how do you bring those to the team. And so part of this work we did here on this energy efficiency credential was to look at regenerative design through an example building. And this is a building that we worked on together as a faculty, and with some of our students as well, with Jessica Williams in particular, to develop this design. And this is a hypothetical design. It won't be built, but it embodies a lot of the thought about regenerative design principles that we've been just discussing. So, the first step, there are two modes really of looking at regenerative design, sustainability. Now, first of all, the passive systems. And, we recognize that we do have winters in Canada and we do have quite hot summers, and we can't always work passively, but there are plenty of times of the year when we can. And so passive is our starting point. So it's looking at the plants and the nature around us, how that can provide some shade. It helped to improve air quality, looking at the sun paths. You know, in the summer, the sun is much higher and the winters are a lot lower. That impacts the glazing and shading and things like glare and passive overheating. We also look at how we can reduce our consumption of potable water, the chemicals that go into that. Can we use rainwater? Can we put that into the landscape? And can we also bring it into the building for certain uses as well? Green roof, we talked about urban agriculture, biodiversity, having amenity spaces on the top of our buildings, which can be enjoyed as not just by ourselves, but by the nature around us. And then when the weather is suitable, can we open up the building and let it just breathe naturally? And this is something which we're seeing more and more in modern buildings that are being constructed, where we're moving away from these kind of sealed curtain wall envelopes into more of a mixed mode approach. When the weather is good, let's open up the windows. And I think COVID, we've seen, has really driven this as part of the way to get more air into the buildings whenever possible and really look at our health and wellness. And as I said, you know, there will be times when the whole passive approach has its limitations, and that's when we need to know about good active systems. And so, starting with the foundations, you know, we can incorporate geo-exchange into the piles, into these geopile systems. That's one way we can exchange energy with the ground. And we recently did this on a project in Fort McMurray for the McMurray Métis on their cultural center, but also earth tubes. I've just completed my thesis on earth tube systems and monitoring in Canada, and we'll be defending that in the next couple of months. So there's lots of knowledge that we bring on how these systems can kind of work together. Again, the earth tube is a way of bringing in fresh air to use the ground to modify the temperatures without actively heating or cooling it. We need to look at, again, rainwater is an important factor, the ponds there. And using efficient mechanical systems. And my background, sort of, you know, 28 years of mechanical engineering design, we were able to share quite a bit of information on that, how we do heat pumps, heat recovery ventilators, etc. To supply plentiful air. We need a lot of air in our buildings for health and wellness, concentration, good air exchange, infection control, etc. But obviously, if we're heating that air in the winter, we don't just want to throw it away. So we have to have a clear path to bring that back down and provide heat recovery from it before that stale air gets thrown away. So this is all part of the whole systems approach of ventilation, health, energy, and wellness. Of course, there are different ways to supply air for human comfort and for health and safety. The one that's been proven to be the most effective is through a raised floor, low level supply, low velocity, like a displacement ventilation system. It's very common in Europe, rather than these high level vents that just blast air in at high volume and can cause quite a lot of discomfort and also be noisy. So this is a much smarter way of doing this. Solar panels, the green roof, and also you know, having a ground floor which is linked to a heat pump does give us the opportunity to provide, you know, radiant floor heating, and that's also been shown to provide maximum comfort for occupants in that way.
Thank you, Trevor. That's a great explanation. I'm just going to quickly then go through how we integrate these ideas into an artificial intelligence exploration. So you have these different modules that you'll explore in the micro-credential, and we're going to move some of these into the masters as well, but you'll play different roles. So in the first module, looking at regenerative design, you'll be the architect. In the last one, you'll be the facilities manager. And these are the kind of things, you don't really think about ethics as a regenerative design component, but it actually is. And so is equity, diversity, and inclusion. So is health and safety, and so is team building. If you neglect any of these aspects of your design, you'll actually find that it may not work the way you expect. And in fact, that's We're going to focus in on module 4, facilities management, and that's actually the problem. You're given this situation. The newly commissioned community center is performing at half its predicted level of energy efficiency. So what do? Well, we've simulated the building in twin motion. You explore that. You have these learning units that we're developing with a company called Digital 55, and you have these AIs, up to 10 of them, that you'll be working with from Amitros Learning. And so the learners interact with the simulated building, the AIs, and the learning units to troubleshoot the problem. You play the role of the facilities manager, and the other roles are all played by AIs. And the learner is provided with an assessment of their work. And this is what it looks like when you're actually interacting online. So this is a human typing, and you can tell it's human because they make mistakes. And they're typing about embodied carbon, and once they figure out, get the CO2 in there, yes. And so that's an initial response. I've cut a little bit. It's a little slower than that, but the AI comes back and says, good start, but are there other reasons why you have to think about things? This is actually, when I first saw this, I thought, oh well, I guess the human got it wrong. But then Trevor informed me that as we become more and more energy efficient, then almost half the new carbon emissions will be embodied carbon. So, and once you've done that, you get this, we've quickened this up a little bit, but you get this printout of a lot of feedback of whether you achieved mastery or competency or didn't quite achieve the necessary goals. So you can see that we're getting some interesting things. And so we're looking at, this is kind of cutting edge stuff, and we're trying to explore it and how we might be able to use it. So we'll be doing more of this. But as I say, equity, diversity, and inclusion are incredibly important aspects of this. Henry, would you be okay to talk about these next few slides?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, great. Over to you.
Okay. So a lot of what we're showing to you right now is really the DNA of our Masters of Architecture program. And a lot of these themes that we are introducing, including the regenerative design and also the theme of EDI, equity, diversity, and inclusion, will be part of pretty much all of the courses, including design studios up until the courses that are directly associated to EDI, which is a course that is called Accessible Design and also Equity in Design. So how we see EDI being kind of played out is really, we're just trying to organize it into nicely fitted boxes right now, is the theme equity, diversity, and inclusion, but that can be translated into accessibility. So how do we design barrier-free, universal design buildings? The concept of identity, how do we make buildings that people feel represented within those spaces? And also equity in terms of affordability. So a lot of these topics come up when we talk to a lot of our, within our current research projects, where we're looking at these concepts with different communities and different towns to think about sustainability and the concept of EDI in town planning, but also bringing all this together into an educational module is what we're trying to do right now. So a lot of this is still really on the drafting board. We're trying to understand it ourselves, along with the new technology we're trying to introduce, like the AI that Douglas just introduced to you. But we're just really excited to show you the early, the rough draft of what we have right now. Next slide, Douglas. So similarly to what Trevor had introduced to you, we are also developing a learning module for the Alberta Real Estate Foundation, another micro-credential that we are targeting to AEC industry professionals and also people working in rural towns to help them think about the concept of EDI when they're developing new projects, new buildings within their own communities. So this is one of the modules just to show you what it kind of looks like. And this is really just a script of how the AI component is going to look like. So the same way that Douglas introduced the other micro-credential, here you also take on the role of a character, such as a town planner within a committee, and you're interacting with different stakeholders who have different opinions about what EDI means. So for example, one community could be an indigenous community, one could be more focused on what is heritage, one may be more interested in affordability. So how do you combine or synthesize all of the different opinions and come up with a solution to different stakeholders and coming up with a proposal that is in consideration of all of that. So next slide, please. So with the AI, what's interesting is that we have all these sub modules where we allow the learners to interact with different stakeholders, and we have these scenarios, almost like a writing a script for a movie right now. We're thinking about, well, what are those difficult situations where architects have to come face to face with a dilemma, and this is what we're doing right now, is thinking about those scenarios where we have to make a decision, but when we have different stakeholders and we have to that are sometimes not thinking in the same direction, what do we do as architects and how do we problem solve? So next slide, please. So these are the 4 scenarios that we came up with up till now. For example, just to give you an example of what the scenarios can look like. Sub-module number 1, we're asking the learners to think about a draft to design, to develop a design guideline for a supposed project for a design competition. So for this design competition, you have to think about, well, what are the important values of the project and connect with the stakeholders. So who are those stakeholders that we need to connect with? Sub-module number 2, now you have those community groups, and they're, one is more interested in affordable housing and the other is more interested in accessibility. How do you come and mediate that situation? So module number 3, looking at, how do we navigate indigenous culture, which is also part of our heritage, and design buildings that within a site, we have to think about the context, but also the history and the past of the location. So how do we navigate the indigenous past versus the colonial past in this situation? And sub-module number 4, asking the learner to synthesize all of this and come up with a strategy moving forward. So as you can see, it's not a black and white yes and no answer. And what is interesting about this is because when we introduce the artificial intelligence, the AI learns as well as we feed answers into it. So we don't feed it answers that, we actually don't know the answers to a lot of these questions. But as we have more feedback and more input, it starts to develop a more intelligence of its own, or in terms of a database that it could refer to. So that's really exciting and also a little bit scary, I think. Douglas, we can talk about the fears that we have with AI, but I think this is also something very exciting that we're dabbling into.
Thank you, Henry. And you're absolutely right. It is scary stuff. But if we don't get involved, if we don't start to work with it and understand it, it will be imposed on us from other places. And there's all sorts of companies out there who would like nothing better than to do a totally AI-based learning experiences. We want to keep humans in the loop. And so we're trying to make sure that we have a handle on this rather than having it imposed on us. But we're doing other things with EDI as well. And I'd like to pass it over to Veronica now to talk about some of the work that she's doing as well. Veronica, over to you.
Great, thank you, Douglas. So one of the initiatives we have right now on the go is a research project that is looking to strengthen cultural regeneration. And we're looking at the state of equity, diversity, and inclusivity in design education. This is a project that I'm working with Salam, who's here with us online. And what we're understanding and what we know about the profession of architecture is that there can be inequitable, situations that you might be faced with in the profession of architecture. And, as architects, we are, really vital in terms of, the impacts that the built environment has on a number of systems, both, economic, social, cultural, and, environmental systems. And so as architects and as a profession of architecture, we really need to kind of strengthen equity, diversity, inclusivity in the profession. And for me, it starts in the education streams. So unfortunately, right now, there isn't a lot of data out there that really starts to give us knowledge in terms of what is happening in both the education and practice of architecture. And it's important to gather this data so that we can then better understand how to address it. So we have a survey available right now that we're seeking participants, architecture students from all over the world, and also any new grads to give their insights in terms of what their experiences have been, as well as for us to collect some data. So there's a link there at the bottom of the of this page, as well as a QR code that you can participate in, and it's totally anonymous. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. But our hopes is that once we collect this data, we better understand the state of EDI, we can then better inform the curriculum that we develop and really kind of push the certain aspects into our curriculum that will, for me, change the kind of future of the profession once we start at this kind of level of education. Next slide, Douglas. The Global Studio is another initiative that we started a few years ago, and it really was a network to reach out to a global audience and to have a global perspective of architecture and to have reach to people all over the world and within your own community is extremely important in kind of this continuing education of architecture. The Global Studio kind of focuses on the themes of regenerative design, universal inclusive design, and equity, diversity, and inclusivity in design. And so far, the Global Studio has had tremendous success. We've had over 50 events that were all free and are available on our YouTube channel. There's 20 lectures, 21 workshops, and really critical workshops on, things also like how to build an effective portfolio, which will be really important when you're looking to do an application to a master's program. There were 2 performances, which is incredible. So it starts to open up the ability for us to connect and on a global level virtually. And, a lot of our initiatives are really focused on student-led initiatives so that we could really highlight the wonderful things that students are doing and to give the audience and the stage over to the students. Next, please. Now, one of the initiatives that was coming out of the Global Studio is a virtual mentoring network. And, mentoring in the profession of architecture is really critical. It's, really becomes part of the continuing education of any architect. As part of the professional internship program, you are required to have a mentor. But to have a variety of mentors throughout your career really helps give you the ability to have someone to lean on, to see different perspectives in architecture, and also to gain further guidance. And my professional mentor is still one that I connect to and with 20 years after the mentorship and program. And so what we're trying to do with the virtual mentoring network is to build a virtual stage where you can connect with professionals and industry leaders across the globe so that you can find someone that you can connect with. One kind of challenge that we're facing right now is that sometimes we can't actually find the mentors that we feel connected with within our own communities. I know that was kind of the case for myself, being a woman in the profession. There weren't a lot of women leaders at the time that I was going through my career. So the hope is that this virtual mentoring mixer and network will open up your ability to meet others so that you can kind of connect with people who are, have similar interests as you do. So we're having a virtual mentoring mixer on October 22nd. We will have further information on our Instagram account, so please follow us there. as well as on the Global Studio website, which is www.globalstudio.ca. And this will be almost like a speed dating event where you can meet and other people within the industry, meet some of your own colleagues, and start to make connections on a global level. So I hope you can join us then.
Thank you, Veronica. And I have to do a shout out to Kristen. Kristen has been managing the Global Studio for us, and she's done a fantastic job. It's exceeded all of our expectations. So thank you, Kristen. Now, I want to move quickly into the accreditation. Now, to become a licensed architect in Canada, you have to go to an accredited school of architecture. This process is controlled by the Canadian Architectural Certification Board, or CACB. The CACB is comprised of provincial regulators like the Ontario Association of Architects, but also the accredited schools of architecture. But I'm going to tell you the truth, it is a labyrinth-like and confusing pathway that I'm not sure I even understand it. And I've been going into the documents for a couple of years now. What we do know is that at the moment, we would not be eligible because we don't provide physical resources. However, there's a validation conference happening next month in Ottawa. I've been invited to attend as a delegate. We'll hear about what we need to do to make changes to become eligible, but I think that's going to take a while. I'm hoping, though, to begin classes in September of 2023. And at that point, if we get our eligibility, then our candidacy sort of begins, but it's a confusing kind of business of when we can start our candidacy, because they have very strict rules about when you can apply for things and how long it takes to process it. So if we can apply for candidacy next September, by September the 15th, they will process our candidacy by July 1st of the next year. If we miss that September 15th deadline, basically we have to wait. It wouldn't matter if we put it in on September the 16th, we'd have to wait till July 1st of the following year. So it's a pretty tight schedule. And then we have to maintain our candidacy for 2 years. And then we apply for the initial accreditation. And this is where we have pre-visit activities, site visits, and other things. And hopefully at the end of that point, we will be accredited. But the question that's probably on everybody's mind is, okay, so I graduate, say in 2025, but accreditation doesn't happen until 2027. Am I out of the loop? Am I never going to become an architect? Well, no. To be eligible for CAC certification, this is from their documents, you must have graduated not more than 2 years before the initial accreditation. So there's this 2-year grace period. But we have to get our timing perfect so that nobody is denied accreditation. So that's with us. We've got to get a schedule which is airtight. To do that, though, we face some challenges. So this is the clause that is most worrisome to us. It talks about physical resources. It talks about workshops, design studio, lecture and seminar spaces, office space, and instructional support space. And everybody has to have convenient and equitable access to these things. Now, we're not a physical school, so we do not have this at the moment. However, in the United States, there's NAB, which is the National Architectural Accreditation Board. This is the clause that they put in that says, if the program's pedagogy does not require some or all of the above physical resources, the program must describe the effect, if any, that online, off-site, or hybrid formats have on digital and physical resources. Okay. So that's what we want them to adopt. If they do, then we would be more than eligible, I think. And so when we talk about making changes, though, we have to go through this cyclic conferences, and that's what is happening in October of this month. So I've got to get there. I've got to try and convince as many people as possible to start making these changes so that we can become eligible. But in the meantime, we also have to address the issue, how do we provide a virtual equivalence of these physical resources? And for that, I'm going to pass it back to Veronica, who's been doing some research in this area.
Yeah. Thanks, Douglas. So, you know, one of the things that we recognize is that all over Canada, there's a kind of there's a lot of maker spaces that are being developed. And, you know, oftentimes these are used by industries and, you know, people within the industry. And also, you know, we're starting to hear that actually students from various schools and various kind of programs in the creative field are actually also using maker spaces, because there's an ability to have access to state-of-the-art technology and as well as connect to other people from a number of industries, which brings a really collaborative kind of venue to that. So we've been making connections with makerspaces all over Canada. I think we've got connections to over 13 right now, and we have a list that exceeds over 20. And we're continuing to grow that list so that we can help you facilitate connection and to a makerspace within your community or close to your community. The maker spaces would normally what they have in terms of equipment are 3D printers, wood and metal shops, CNC machines, laser cutters, and also digital equipment such as digital computers and whatnot. And so we're continuing to grow this kind of list and database of maker spaces all over Canada and all of our provinces and territories, so that this could be a great kind of opportunity to allow you to have a physical space to work in and to create models and connect with people.
And so in addition, though, we want to create our own kind of space, which is, this is what we've applied to the Canada Foundation for Innovation to fund. We've called it the Digital Twins Innovation Hub, but it comprises all of the things that you see in white are things we actually already have, but all of the things that you see in green are things we've applied funding for. So we're looking for 3D scanners that could scan entire buildings. We're looking for really top-notch 3D printers and laser cutters that you would have access to over the internet. So you could send a file to the Athabasca facility and get it couriered back to you. We're also looking at wireless sensors because we think that's going to be a huge component of what we're going to be doing. And of course, all of the different apps that are online at the moment. And we're thinking about wired and wireless connections for the future. But as we wrap up, we're going to need your help. So what we want to do, and we're working out this strategy for doing this, is we want to send a petition to the CACB that says that an accredited online Master of Architecture would greatly enhance the diversity and inclusiveness of the profession by allowing greater flexibility in terms of time and geography. Such a program would serve hundreds of potential architects who cannot, for whatever reason, attend a location-based university on a full-time basis. We ask the Canadian Architectural Certification Board to revise Clause 3.6 to allow digital or online equivalents to the required physical resources. And so this is where we're going to probably tweak and do some wordsmithing on this document, but then we'd like to send it out to our email lists to ask you to respond to say, I support this motion, and if you don't support it, that's okay too. But we'd ask you, I think, you know, many of the people online are in exactly that position where you have the potential to be great architects, but you can't stop what you're doing to attend a university on a full-time basis. You can't move away from your community to attend a school in another part of the country. We need to provide this alternative because our purpose here is to unlock the architectural talent inherent in diverse communities across Canada and around the world. And we think that the program that we've just described to you can do exactly that. But being educators, we have taken far too much time to present this information. I'm happy to stay for as long as people have questions this evening. But if you have, I want to stop sharing my screen and allow people to talk about, you know, their concerns or what they would like to talk about. And as I say, I'll try to stay as long as possible so that we can have as much discussion as possible. But we'll actually stop talking now and hold it open for questions. So if you just want to unmute and share your question or concern, we'd be happy to listen.
Hi there, I have a quick question.
Please.
My name's Brianna. I'm actually in part 2 of the REIC syllabus, but I have a undergraduate degree from another university. And I'm just looking at your proposed courses. Is there a possibility in the future that some of these syllabus students could transfer for credit or apply to the master's and kind of jump in midway?
Absolutely, Brianna. We're trying to work out pathways for a variety of different options and opportunities. So we know how hard the syllabus students work and how many hours that they're accumulating as well. We want to try and recognize those facts and see how we could do that. So yes, the short answer is yes. We're trying to work out some of the details. We put together the basics of a foundation year, which if I probably should have put a slide in for that, but it would involve, let's say you have a degree which is totally unrelated to architecture. So you may not have done architecture before, but you might have a great portfolio and have great creativity. So there's about, Carol, if you're with us and you want to correct me, I think there's about 8 courses we're asking you to take at the undergraduate level that would make you ready to go into 8 to 10 courses at the undergraduate level that would make you ready to go into the full-fledged master's. But again, you will need to put a portfolio in. For syllabus students, though, we'll try and arrange pathways where you can move back and forth. We're trying to work with the RAIC to get reciprocity so people can move back and forth as it fits them. We want that flexibility, but hopefully our hope is that the syllabus won't go away either, that there's still that work experience option. So I hope that answers your question.
That does. Thank you very much.
Okay. Other people, just feel free to shout it out if you like.
Yes, hi. My name is Rose. So thank you so much for everything you're doing. I really admire that. And I will definitely, put a word in the survey because it will help me personally. I'm in Montreal and I did urban planning for my bachelor. So I had a few details I want to clarify, please. It's for the architecture, let's say. If I do your master of architecture, once it is validated for the accreditation, will I be able to be an architect despite the fact that I don't have a bachelor in architecture? Or will I have to do that equivalence or like go in, let's say, another university?
Yeah. There's 2 options, Rose, and which you could pursue. I don't know I don't know the details of your degree in urban planning. So it may qualify. What we
Okay.
do for getting into the graduate diploma in architecture, we ask people to have a certain number of credits in design studios, a certain number of credits in history and theory.
Okay.
And if you have all of those, you may find that you're eligible for entry directly into the 2-year program.
Okay.
The other scenario is that we think, well, maybe you need some design studio or something, and we'd ask you to do the foundation year, and then you could move into the master's program.
Okay. Okay. And once I do the Master of Architecture, will I be eligible for the accreditation to be an architect, or that is not an option?
If you take our program, and if our program is accredited, then you will be eligible to become a licensed architect in Canada. Now,
Okay.
yeah, so accreditation is the big thing. It's the big hurdle. It's the big thing.
Definitely.
We're working hard. We want to actually surpass the requirements of the CACB by providing our students with experiences that they could have nowhere else.
Exactly.
And so,
Thank you so much. Thank you.
very welcome. Other questions?
Just a quick question for Rose. Are you planning to work in Canada?
Sorry, I'm
Are
sorry.
you planning to work as an architect in Canada? Is that what you're
Yes,
asking, or
in
are you
Canada,
asking if,
yes. Because
you
I'm
will-
already working right now. I'm doing an internship in urban planning. So I'm like a few months away from doing the exam to be an urban planner. So after that, I want to have the architecture as well and try to have both if possible.
Yeah, so I think just to follow up on Douglas's answer is that I think when you come into the Masters of Architecture program, we'll assess what your bachelor was about and how many courses you need to take, or if any, if you need any to come into the Masters of Architecture.
Yeah.
Then you have to wait until it gets accredited, and then you have
Yes.
to do you still have to do your internship, the 3,000 hours
Yes.
of internship,
Yes.
and
Yes.
also pass the 4 exams.
Exactly.
So-
Exactly.
So there are several more steps.
Exactly,
to it as
exactly.
well. But I wanted to mention to you is that Canada also has reciprocity with several countries after
Okay.
you get become a licensed architect. So we have reciprocity with the U.S. and
Oh,
with Mexico, and in Montreal, Quebec actually has a reciprocity agreement with France as well.
oh,
So
nice.
you might
Okay.
you might look into that. I mean, that's
Okay.
probably a few years later, but
Okay, thank you so
yeah.
much. Thank you. And I have a tiny question, please, for the program. With low residency, do you mean I will have to attend the campus for some studios?
Yes. What we're planning is we want to get everybody together, and
Yes.
perhaps even in the town of Athabasca, which is in north of Edmonton, it'll be
Okay.
5 to 10 days. We're
Okay.
deciding but we want to get to know you, and so
Yeah.
that you get to know us, and
Mm.
then after that, though, it will be all online. And
Okay. Okay.
I do want to build on what Henry said, because this is important. We always want to give you the full information. There's
Yeah.
many Canadian students who now do go and take part in the virtual schools, the virtual online schools in the United States.
Mhm.
We have placed our own graduates there. Even architectural technologists go down to the United States and sometimes get directly into the master's programs. So
Okay.
that's another option if we don't get accredited. But one of the things that we kind of are suggesting, though, is through reciprocity with the United States, the
Yeah.
Canadian Architectural Certification Board has already accepted a
Mhm.
virtual online education because of
Oh.
reciprocity. So our
Yeah.
hope is that, based on that realization, that the CACB will follow the example of NAB and
Yeah.
make it easy for us to create this. It won't be easy, sorry, but make it less difficult for us to
Yeah.
create the program
Yeah.
and really move into the 21st century. And
Definitely.
so even if if we don't get accredited or we don't get eligibility, there's still virtual online options for everybody.
Okay.
And Carol documented a number of those ones.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Other questions, and even if it's about becoming an architect in Canada or the United States, feel free to share them with us. It's always helpful. Okay.
Actually, I'll say something.
Oh, please.
I know I've been one of the biggest supporters to have this master's going as a person who needed it personally. So really thankful for all the hard work you guys been putting into this. Really astonishing what you've accomplished, and anything you need, we're here to support you. You know that, and I know we have a positive impact in this world. So hopefully we continue with that. I have a question. I don't know if it will affect or will be helpful for anyone. So like with a bachelor degree, you have the freedom to do the courses other than the design studio anytime. Will you have the same thing for the masters?
Yes, that's a good question. The way Athabasca works is you can start one of our history or theory or technical courses any month of the year. You register by the 10th of the month, the previous month, and then you can start it on, let's say, if you had registered on September the 10th, you could start our structures course on October the 1st. We've also tried to expand our studio offerings, so now you can take studios in January, in May, and in September, so 3 times a year. So for those who really want to move quickly, this can be an advantage, but we also recognize that people like to do things at their own pace, and it may take you additional time in order to complete this. The whole idea, they want us to graduate a cohort before we can be accredited, but the whole idea of a cohort doesn't quite fit with our system yet. But what we'll do is when we graduate a group of students, then we can start our process for moving forward in the accreditation once we have enough work to look at. But yes, we intend to keep that flexibility. What I would love to do is allow you to start one of our history, theory, or technical courses any day of the year. We're trying to move towards that at Athabasca. It'll be a little while, though, before we get there, but that's really important. You can work at your own pace. If you want to take a studio every semester, including during the summer, you can. But if you want to only take one studio a year, that's also okay. We think this is important. And I do want to say this. The reason, Salam, that we are doing all this is actually for everyone online, because the last 10 years of my life, I have seen just how hard everybody works. I mean, imagine, so, well, you don't have to imagine because this is your reality. You may be working all day for an architect or as an architectural technologist. Then you come home and you're starting you're interacting with your family. Maybe you have kids to put to bed, and then you start your work on your architectural courses, or our studios are often in the evening because of that very reason. So if you're in Nova Scotia, you may find yourself still in that studio at midnight or later. And so we appreciate just the dedication of the students. And we think it is actually, it's with that level of dedication, I think the CACB would be absolutely foolish not to figure out a way to get our students into the profession of architecture. Because if you're that dedicated at the education level, just think what you'll do for the profession as well. So what we've seen and what we try to cultivate is the fact that our students are second to none in terms of their dedication and their energy and their hard work. And we have to have that recognized. I could actually cite examples from just the people I see on the screen in front of me. I won't embarrass anybody, but I'm amazed at how hard people work. Now, Carol, are you checking the chat? I haven't opened up the chat to see if there's any questions in there. Maybe I should do that.
Yes, I'm just putting the FSG Student Success Center email in there for any further questions after this evening.
Oh, good. And Carol's put in the courses for the foundation year. Thank you very much. Okay, so I'm just going to quickly answer questions. So, okay, the survey is in there. Wonderful. Let me just put this over here so I can see it better. Okay. What are the outcomes for first wave of graduates in the event that the program is not awarded accreditation? Mark, that is the brutal question. If we have a chance to reapply for accreditation, but I don't know what would happen if we're denied initial accreditation. I simply don't know. I don't think it's ever happened, but if it was to happen, it could very well happen to us because we are so different. So everybody is taking a gamble, and I can't stress that enough. If your timeline permits you, you may want to try even, okay, I'm going to wait it out to see if these guys get accredited. On the other hand, we have to, sadly, we do need some people to go through the program in order to get a cohort. And so it's risky. It's a gamble, and I'm never going to deny that that's the case. We just don't, and if we don't get accredited, well, we might negotiate with the CACB to say, okay, you feel that our students were deficient here, here, and here. Could we provide an alternative so that those students might do an extra course or something? We simply don't know what the situation might be, but it is something that keeps me awake at night, just so you know. And Nicholas, he mentions that he just finished his low residency course at Lawrence Technical in Michigan this summer, and it was a build week. Nicholas, did you want to, Nicholas is a graduate of our program. Nicholas, did you want to share anything more about that?
Yeah, so congratulations on all of this. This is fantastic to hear. I have a lot of friends that went through the architectural technology program at St. Clair College and have been waiting for exactly this because they can't do the traditional route. So I think this is going to be a great pathway for many, many, many people across the country. I went to LTU to finish my schooling and my master's. I've got 2 more semesters left, so I'm almost done. And I just did the low residency program. So what we did is we did a build week, which was basically we designed for the first 2 months of summer, and then everyone from all across the country in the United States Canada. We had somebody as far as Uganda, Africa there. Everyone flew to Michigan or got to Michigan, and we did a design build basically project. So that was our low residency. We had to be there for 7 days, and that was the residency requirement for there. So I think that if Athabasca could do something along those lines, or I'm sure that you have all sorts of ideas, I think it would be really great. I really enjoyed the experience seeing people in person rather than just this little box on a screen was nice. It really kind of worked out well. So I think it's a great opportunity for you guys to do.
Thank you, Nicholas. We're very interested in your experiences, and yeah, we may contact you and sort of pick your brain a bit more. We have been in contact with all of the schools in the United States that offer virtual options, and we're learning from them a great deal. But as you can see from the numbers that Carol produced, they're also all over the map in terms of costs. But the Lawrence Technical University seems to be very, very, very cost effective.
I mean, my bank account would beg to differ,
Yeah,
but no, but it's true. Out of a lot, I have a friend that's at Boston Architectural College right now. It is a cost-effective way of doing things, but I think that it would be great if Canada could offer a similar program.
Yes, and I will note as well, this is very interesting. Another one of our students was accepted, a graduate of the Bachelor of Science of Architecture, was accepted into Boston Architectural College into their low residency program, which asks you to attend there for 8 days every semester. But she's just told us that, in fact, when she starts in January, they're going to do their residency online, an intensive 8-day experience online, which would be pretty grueling, I imagine, almost, because you'd never have a break. But so they're moving towards almost a totally virtual program. We think that a low residency will actually will sort of provide some comfort to the CACB that it's not totally virtual. And so that's one of the reasons why we're exploring that. There's a couple of other questions. Scott is wondering, is there an email address for further questions? And Carol has put that into the chat as well. So questions can be directed to Emma, and you can see her email address down there towards the bottom of the list. Now, Carol's also put the foundation courses in, and Tony is asking, would that also apply for an unrelated master's degree obtained more than 10 years ago? So perhaps, Tony, you're asking about whether an unrelated degree, but at the master's level, you could apply and maybe take the foundation year. If I understand that correctly, absolutely, that would be an acceptable route. I don't know if you want to, I don't know if you're still with us, Tony, or if you wanted to expand on that. Okay, just to expand on that though, one of the critical things will be, in addition to having either if you have a graduate degree, that's great. If you have an undergraduate, and it could be in anything, it could be in business or it could be in nursing, the things we'll be looking for is what's happening in your portfolio. In other words, do we think that you have the necessary creative and design skills to prosper in a master's program? And if so, that's why we have the foundation year, so you can get the architectural background and get right into the master's. Now, I will share with you as well, just so you know, sometimes the foundation year is used by other schools. It's almost like a revenue generating scheme. We have placed students at other universities in Canada into master's program, but they do seem to have to take the foundation year, even though they're then awarded advanced standing for a number of the courses, because we have a fully functional undergraduate program. And again, what you want to look for in your undergraduate program in architecture is something called, it's a pre-professional program. So it does have all the necessary technical courses and studios. So for example, some schools are not considered to have pre-professional programs. These include UBC, University of Calgary, University of Toronto. And if you go to one of those, it's almost guaranteed you'll have to take a foundation year. The University of Toronto takes in upwards of 1,000 students, or they have 1,000 students applying for their undergrad in architecture, but not all of them, only 50 of them per year get into the studio stream. So you can see that if you're not in the studio stream, you're going to be in trouble getting into an accredited program. So a lot of schools, like Dalhousie almost inevitably puts anybody into their foundation year, even if you've got a degree from a accredited school, an undergraduate degree from an accredited school. That's just the way they do things. Everybody's a little different, and it's really important as you're applying for different schools to know the nuances of all of that. And Tony's noticed that, okay, that's okay. And are there other questions? Anything even about the process? Because, it's complicated and you've got to get good advice.
I have a tiny question, please.
Please.
So I did my bachelor in French, but I have English, certificates from previous years. I just wanted to know, do you require the, exam as other universities in English to be able to get in, or some certificates will be accepted as well, or like a test, live test, something like that?
Yeah, that's a very good question, Rose. Athabasca recognizes a number of certificates in English proficiency.
Okay.
And I'm not sure which ones you have, and I'm not even sure all of the ones that we recognize, but we try to be generous in terms of those things.
Okay.
So we even fall back on, for our professional practice courses, sometimes we ask students to just provide us with a brief essay to prove their English proficiency. And so we may continue on with some of those as well.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
Denai has asked a question. I am a new student in so you're a new student in our Bachelor of Science of Architecture, and I'm curious to know if I missed this information during the presentation. Will a low residency workshop be mandatory in your master's program, or would the program be 100% online, similar to the bachelor's program? We are going to ask everybody to participate in the low residency workshop. And again, that's going to really, and one of the reasons we want to do that is, as I said, to get to know you and you get to know us, but also to give the CACB a degree of comfort with our program. Okay. And thank you, Salam, for joining us. I'm not sure if you've left, but we really appreciate all of your support. Okay.
Hi, sorry, I do have a question. I'm currently in part 2 of the syllabus program, and also my 3rd year of the bachelor program at AU. And I was super excited about this possibility of the master's program, but after my bachelor's degree, I was potentially going to enroll in the graduate program. And so I guess my question is that still something that you think I should consider, or should I wait maybe for the master's degree, or is there a point in taking the graduate? Or I know all education is great, or but I just figured I should ask.
This is a really tough one, Kira, because it talks to the risk. If you take the graduate diploma in architecture, all of those courses, and I mean all of those courses, will transfer directly into the Masters of Architecture. All of them are included in the Masters of Architecture. So you could take the GDA and get that diploma and also get your syllabus, your part 3 of your syllabus. You'd still have to do, I've forgotten how many, it's something like 4,000 or 5,000 hours worth of work experience to do the syllabus route, but that would still be absolutely open to you. It may be quicker in that context, though, if the master's reaches eligibility. If we do get it open, then it might be quicker to do the master's program instead. But both routes would be available to you. And we will absolutely ensure that anybody in the graduate diploma in architecture gets full credit for those courses moving into the master's. But again, our big gamble is, will we be accredited or not? And I hope, we'll do another one of these in January. At that point in time, I hope to be able to tell you the CACB has changed its requirements. We are eligible. We have done our eligibility. We will open in September. and then fingers crossed that everything goes well. So that's the sort of situation we're in. But absolutely, one way to do it, if you want to get, if you want to take a gamble, and it is a gamble, you could start the GDA, and then we would, and as if you're a syllabus student who has got your parts 1 and 2 and all of the necessary courses, then you are absolutely eligible to go into the GDA. And if you do that, then we will probably just stream you right into the masters as well. So, but again, it's a gamble.
Perfect. Thank you.
Other questions? And any question is a good one. Okay. If we realize you may have questions that are unique for your situation. Okay. I've just got a couple of ones just came in. Vic is asking, there are many overlapping courses of the RAC syllabus and the foundation year courses. Absolutely true. If I finished Arch 330, APST 470 in the RAC syllabus, can I transfer the credit to the foundation year? If I pass the Ontario Building Code exam, can I skip the PPRC 450 Building Code course? Okay, to the first part of your question, absolutely you can transfer those courses into the foundation year. Absolutely no problem. Now the Ontario Building Code exam, however, even though it may be very, very rigorous, typically, sadly, those things, because they're not conducted at a post-secondary institution, it may not be eligible for a transfer credit for PPRC 450, the Building Code course. And that is unfortunate. Without knowing more about the OBC, I can't tell you whether it would be eligible or not. But in general, things done outside post-secondary environments are not eligible. Okay. And just to wrap up then, as you know, you may have questions that are unique to your situation, and Emma, her email address is in the chat. Please do that. And please also fill out the survey. We're really looking forward to getting a lot of students to give us feedback, because frankly, we don't have good information about equity, diversity, and inclusion in architectural education. We need your background on this to help us to do better. And then the other thing is, I would say, if you only join one thing, try and make time on Saturday, October the 22nd for the virtual mentoring opportunity. It's not to be missed, and you may make a connection there that will change your life. And if some of you also have tremendous experience already, and if you want to participate as a virtual mentor, please drop a line to Veronica, because I'm sure she would be thrilled to have more mentors. I'm hoping that's correct, Veronica. I think we are losing people now, so I will wrap this one up. But again, this is the first, this is our first information session. We'll have more, and we always are happy, all of us, to answer any questions anybody might have.